Without further ado, please welcome the powerhouse, Senator Joyce Elliott.
Well, good morning, everybody. I have to always ask this obligatory question, am I on? And most of my students would go, please don't be on, but I think I am. Well, I think what Paul and Lisa have talked about has set a great context for what I want to talk about. Because I'm going to talk about doing the work in the legislature and always being in this position, in a hole and still digging. Because as Lisa and Paul talked, I think some of you, if you have not thought about it very much, the context of how so much is baked in to our system that we don't think about these kind of things. We don't think about, for example, that perhaps being born in black skin could be like a prison. You don't think about how absolutely exhausting it is, I can tell you, to be black. And here's a funny little thing that's happened. I cut my hair many, many years ago, as some of you know. But I did notice a very difference in the way I was stopped by the police after I began to look more like a black man by my head. Yes, yes. So what I realized as a legislator, whether it's intentional or not, we have all of these notions, these ideas, and some of them we never even think about because it's just part of the system. Well, guess who gets to go to the legislature and make laws? The same people who are part of this system, and that includes me and everybody else. So some things will happen very unintentionally, and that's understandable. What is not understandable or forgivable is not learning that and not understanding that all of us bring whatever we bring to the legislature. And perhaps, just perhaps, what we do in that building will have negative effects sometimes because we have not dealt with all of the things we brought with us to that building. And so that affects the laws that we pass. For example, when somebody says something as naive and as brilliant as, and this was said by a legislator, if you do the crime, then you've got to do the time. How elementary is that? That's what we used to say on the playground. But this building is so powerful. That's the reason I wanted to put it there, because I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to what goes on in that building and how that fortress of what should be justice sometimes just is not. So when I got to the legislature, we were in the throes of making everything a felony. I mean, we just went crazy because we were coming off the 1990s where we had made everything about drugs a war on drugs. Then we were coming into the 2000s where we were going to make sure everybody who committed any kind of crime, we're going to make sure you are well punished. Forget about being reformed. So I just want to walk through with you a little bit on something I tried in the legislature. So first you've got this big building here. You enter that building, you want to get a law passed. I don't mean to be insulting to anybody, but I just want to walk you through what it means, because people will say to me and write to me and say, oh, don't let them take away our this. Don't let them do this, as if I have more votes than I have. That's why y'all need to vote for some people so I can have some help. So be sure. Now, this is the Senate where I serve. There are 35 people in the Senate. To pass anything in the Senate, I have to start in a committee before I can get to that floor. And any committee in the Senate, I have to get 5 out of 8 people to go along with me. 5 out of 8. If I can do that, I make it here. When I make it here, there are 35 people. That means that I have to make sure I can get 18 people. Doesn't sound like much, but it's hard to do. If I get it out of this place, then I've got to go down to the other end. That's a picture of the house. But before it goes into that house, I have to go into a committee at the house to get it to here. And on that end, I've got to get 11 out of the 20 people, or whatever number they have that day, and whatever they'll let us do. But when it gets into this place, it really gets tough, because there are 100 people, and I have to get 51 out of the 100 to get anything passed. Are you following me here? This is not, so the next time you write me a letter and say, just don't let them do this, you be sure you have voted and voted the right way come October the 6th. All right, November the 6th. So when we talk about criminal justice, I tell you all that because it is absolutely important. We have the system we have now because of those two bodies in many ways. Not totally, but very much so. So we have great racial disparities in Arkansas. That's what I want to talk about, the people who are in the system. So we had a racial disparities in Arkansas criminal justice system research project at University of Arkansas, Little Rock at the Bowen School of Law. And through this project that we chose to do, we had a task force that we were going to tackle this when it comes to looking at our laws. Maybe, just maybe, and this was difficult to get legislators to believe, maybe we are a part of the problem. Could it be? Is it possible? Can that happen? No, we're too perfect. So we did the research, and this is what we found out, and this is hard to see over here. But you can see on that far side that blacks are approximately 15.7% of the population in our state. Over here, blacks make up about 43% of the prison population. That's like 3 times. And the men, black men only make up 9% of the people in our state, but when you look at prisons, what do you see? So this is what we're trying to address. Latinos, if you look over here, 7.2%, and this is like recent stuff, but you can see the trajectory that's happening. Latinos make up about 7.2%, but already they're at almost 3% in our prison system. Whites make up 73%, and over here, they're 73% of the population, but they're only 54% of the prison population. So you can see clearly the disparity that we're dealing with. So our racial disparities task force decided that we're going to introduce legislation that would require us, on the slight possibility that legislators could be a part of the problem, we're going to require us, before we do certain things, that we're going to have to submit a racial impact statement. You know, before people build bridges, build places, they have to do environmental impact statements. Most of the times we want to pass a lot of legislation, we have to do fiscal impact statements. So we got this notion, we'll do this. So the whole idea was, before you create a new misdemeanor or felony, you're going to have a racial impact statement. Those things that are listed there, before you make these changes or add new laws or whatever, think about, we already know we're in a hole and digging. Think about the possibility that this law that you think is so fantastic is going to go solve the world's problem. How might it exacerbate that hole we're already in, or we're going to keep digging? Makes complete sense, doesn't it? It makes me stop and think. And it doesn't mean that you can't pass the law if it shows that there is a racial impact that is disparate, but it makes you stop and think, can you do it another way? And that racial impact statement was to include these things: the estimated number of criminal offenses affected per year and the impact on minority groups as defined under Arkansas Code, and the impact on the correctional facilities and services, and anything else that was deemed appropriate. This is what we wanted to think about before we just up and pass a law. Because many times, unless you are so steeped in, I know what's right and nobody else does, if you're not going to pay anything to the things that you heard from Paul and Lisa and know so much of this is baked in, then you have real problems with this. And you start saying stupid things like, if you do the time, you got to do the crime. But it was forcing us to think about things. Does it really have to be this way? Because there are all kinds of laws that we know have had disparate impacts. Probably wouldn't take most of us a second to think about it. Well, people would say, well, no, you can't do that. But yeah, we could, because we had some people who were forerunners. At the time we were doing this, Iowa was the first state in the country to pass a racial impact statement. Connecticut has a racial impact statement. Oregon has a racial impact statement. All of them passed. Minnesota has a racial impact statement, but that came from their sentencing commission as opposed to legislation. So we knew it could be done. So at the head of our project was Ijua Arturo, who is not with us anymore. She's in DC now. But these were some of the people, who were really, really major players in helping us get this off going. Mark Meyer and Nicole Porter were very, very good because they had worked with Iowa and Oregon, I think it was. And Marquise Jenkins, who was with the NAAC Legal Defense Fund. Malik Safir, who's sitting back here, was our Arkansas lead person out there who was not in the legislature. And Representative Clark Tucker was the person who worked with me on the House end, because when you get it to the House, they don't allow me to come on the floor and introduce the bill. So the other thing you have to do is get somebody who's willing to introduce the bill in the House and make sure it goes. So he was very helpful. Bob Edwards, who was the person who helped us do a lot of strategy, was excellent. And the Office of Economic and Tax Policy, that's not something you probably know, but that's our legislative bureau at the Capitol. And the Bowen School of Law and the Arkansas Policy Program at Hendrix. We had to have all these people involved to get people to believe we could do this, because the first thing they said is you can't do it. In spite of Iowa already doing it, in spite of Connecticut and Oregon. But people just had a real issue with the notion that if you committed a crime, it had nothing to do with your race. If you committed a crime, it had nothing to do with your economic standing, because they had never thought about all the laws that we passed that are indeed inherently discriminatory. They just hadn't thought about that. For example, and most of you probably know what happened with the drug laws. Most of you probably know that. If you don't, I think that's some research you need to do. When we go into our schools, when we pass laws that we're going to have a resource officer in every school, and a resource officer gets the ability to arrest kids in the school. Now, you don't have to be brilliant to know who's most going to get arrested in schools, because all you have to do is look at the disciplinary reports. Mainly, all you have to do is breathe to know it. So, and when we look at things like the bail systems that we have, who's most likely to be able to post bail and not? Who's most likely to be able to pay every time you report to your parole officer or probation officer? Who can do all of these things? I mean, it is something that is so insidious and so much a part of our society that we thought this is going to be a great idea. So in 2013, this is how long I've been working on this, passed the first bill in 2013. So anybody have an idea what that 15 represents? How many votes did I have to have? 18. I got 15 votes in 2013. 15 votes. Barely got, but keep in mind, I did get it out of committee. That was great. That was something. So 15 votes. We were over the moon, Malik, remember? We were over the moon because we got 15 votes. Because we only needed to get 3 more. And we were happy. That's how hard this is to do. That we were happy we got 15 votes. So that kept us in a position, yeah, we're coming back with this because, boy, we got 15 votes out of 35 people. Seems we would have been able to do it. Well, no, but here we come. We came back in 2015. Let's do it again. All right, let's do it again. So in 2015, here we came back with Senate Bill 604. And we got 13 votes. We went backward. That's how hard it is to talk about criminal justice and race. We got 15 votes the first time. Then we got 13. That was really debilitating. What that 17 represents, we have a procedure in the Senate. If you don't get your bill passed the first time, and the Senate's real good about allowing us to do this, you can just say, I move that we expunge the vote by which it failed, And you can bring the bill up again, just like that. So I expunged the vote, thinking, okay, we have to get 5 more votes, but I believe we can do it. This is the second time around that we have done this. Surely everybody is getting the point. So we came back, and the heartbreak of all heartbreaks, we got 17 votes. And we are in session 2 of trying this. We got 17 votes. And you just stand there, and you just want one more person to step up. And indeed, there was one other person who had told me, I am 95% sure I'm going to vote for this bill. It's been hard for me, but I'm going to do it. And he didn't. His 5% prevailed. And we lost again, second time around, with 17 votes, and we needed 18. No, are we finished? No. 2017 happened, we're back again. And that's the thing about criminal justice that is so difficult. You have to just keep coming back unless you're just willing to accept it. Because I operate from this belief that when something is not acceptable, you must do something about it, no matter how many times you have to come back. So here we are again in 2017. So in 2017, indeed, that person who had told me he was going to vote for it in 2015, because I'm not a Republican necessarily, but I'm like an elephant. I have a long memory. So I went back to him. So 2017, we had the hardest time this time getting out of committee. But we did, because after working with people and working with the people, most of them just said, well, I won't vote against it, so we got out of committee. And look what we did. We got our 18 votes. Yes. That amounts to 5 years to get to 18 votes, or 3 terms to get to 18 votes. 3 terms to get to 18 votes. So you see why I'm practically begging you to go out and vote and do the right thing. This stuff is hard to do. And I'm one of those persons who, I want to do this work. I'm not apologetic about being a politician. I am a politician. I don't like it when people say stuff like, I'm going to run, but I'm not a politician. Well, don't run. Don't come to my house and say my house is on fire and say, well, I'm not a firefighter. No, I want a firefighter to show up. But the issue is I digress, but the issue is for us to make it something respectable, because we want good people to run for office. And so that's why I think we should own it, but make it respectable. Okay, excitement. So we got it out of the House, out of the Senate. We go to the House, get to the committee, and I could not put all this up here, but we get to the committee, and this committee is like, whoa, where did this come from? But many of them were attorneys, and they kind of understood a little bit better. But they would not pass the bill out of the House. And by then, I'm working with Clark Tucker in the House. And so they wouldn't pass the bill out of the House committee. And finally, we amended it, and it was almost amended to a should. You know, you should at least have a racial impact statement. Here's what happened. We finally got it out of the House. So we almost get it out. Finally, when we amended it, we get it out. We get to the Senate floor. Remember, there are 100 votes. How many do I need? 51. That's what we got, 33. We got 33 votes. 33 people voted for it. 32 people voted against the bill. Straight out voted against it. Almost as many voted for it. 20, that 20 right there, it means that there were 20 people who did not vote. That 15 means there were 20 people who just voted present, which is basically the same thing. Doesn't help. That is where we stand right now. That is where we stand. And what is important right now, if we care about mass incarceration, we have a responsibility to look at our laws and question ourselves. I can take up that responsibility. I can question all I want to. But we have laws that are absolutely unintentional many times and sometimes intentional. discriminatory, that are a big part of mass incarceration. A racial impact statement would make us slow down, think, and look for another way. And I'm asking you, you're here because you care, to help us look for another way and vote for people who understand perhaps that legislators aren't as perfect as we think we are, and hold us accountable for a racial impact statement in this state. Thank you so much.